Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Halo Chronicle. This is part 6 in my First Strike series. If you haven't seen the previous videos in this series, I highly recommend you check those out first. Links will be provided in the description below. Last time, we discussed Operation Red Flag and the introduction of a new Mjolnir platform. The Master Chief was given a new set of Mjolnir armor. This armor came with two major upgrades. The first was energy shielding. Oni researchers reverse engineered captured Covenant tech to create a highly advanced energy shielding system, which was implemented into the new Mjolnir platform. The second upgrade was AI integration. An AI port was installed into the new Mjolnir system. This port would act similarly to the AI port on UNSC warships. The AI could feed the Spartan important information while in combat and help the warrior perform better. With the new AI port, Halsey would introduce the Master Chief to his new secret weapon, Cortana. The Master Chief was put through a brutal obstacle course to prove the effectiveness of the new Mjolnir platform. With the help of Cortana, the Chief was able to complete this course after literally deflecting a missile with his hand. This would prove the effectiveness of the Mjolnir platform and the Spartans themselves. The UNSC brass would approve a near-suicidal plan. This plan would be called Operation Red Flag. This plan would call for a refitted UNSC ship to disable and capture a Covenant vessel. The Spartans would then board the Covenant ship and assume control of it using Cortana. They would then take the ship back to the Covenant homeworld and capture a Covenant leader known as a Prophet. They would then bring the Prophet back to human-controlled space and use it to broker a peace treaty with the Covenant. The UNSC ship chosen for this insane mission would be called the Pillar of Autumn, and it would be captained by Captain Jacob Keyes. The ship would prepare in the naval shipyards on planet Reach, the last major UNSC stronghold. Just as the Pillar of Autumn was preparing to leave the Reach system, an emergency message would be broadcast to all UNSC ships in the system. This message would bring grave news. A large Covenant force had been detected in the Reach system. All UNSC forces were recalled to deal with the invading armada. Now that I have recapped last week's episode, let's jump into today's climactic battle. Before we jump into the details of the battle for Reach, first we must discuss Reach's defenses. Reach was the last stronghold of the UNSC. It housed the UNSC's largest shipyard as well as many of its commanders. As such, Reach was heavily fortified. At any given time, Reach would have upwards of 100 to 150 UNSC vessels in its orbit. Reach also had 20 orbital defense platforms containing superMAC guns. These superMAC guns were able to fire significantly larger MAC rounds than those used by UNSC warships, and as such, they were much more deadly. These orbital defense platforms were powered wirelessly with generators on Reach's surface. When it came to defense, Reach was the most well-protected world with one exception: Earth. After hearing the emergency action message from the UNSC High Command, Captain Keyes orders the Pillar of Autumn to turn around and move to help defend Reach. The only problem was the Pillar of Autumn was at the system's edge, and it would take upwards of an hour to reach the planet. This battle would likely not last that long. Sensing something was wrong, the Master Chief attempted to contact Captain Keyes on the ship's intercom, but before he could reach the captain, Keyes appeared in the ship's loading dock with the Spartans. Keyes would give the Spartans an in-person mission briefing on the severity of the situation. Keyes would push for Operation Red Flag to be scrapped. The Master Chief would resist and insist that these two missions did not have to contradict each other. The Chief stated that this was the perfect opportunity to capture a Covenant vessel. Keyes agreed that it would be possible, but defending Reach would take priority for the time being. As Keyes was delivering this mission briefing, Cortana would report some potentially devastating news. An Oni stealth ship called the Circumference docked in Gamma Station was unresponsive. All ships in the Reach system were ordered to enact the Cole Protocol and purge all navigational data. The Circumference was not tied to the UNSC systems directly as Protocol stated, and as such, the data was not deleted. Fearing that the UNSC's navigational data could fall into Covenant hands, Keyes tasked the Spartans with going to Gamma Station to destroy the data. Keyes feared that if he were to blow up the circumference with the Pillar of Autumn's weapons, it could potentially damage the orbital defense platforms. Before the Spartans could act on their new orders, Keyes was alerted to another potentially devastating crisis. Several squads of Covenant dropships had made it through the orbital defense platforms and were poised to land on the surface of the planet near the orbital generators. Keyes knew if the Covenant took out the orbital generators, Reach would fall. Knowing this, Keyes tasked the Spartans with going to Reach's surface and defending the orbital generators. The Master Chief would split his squad into two teams. Blue team would consist of the Master Chief, Spartan James, and Spartan Linda. Red team, led by Spartan Frederick, would consist of all of the remaining 21 Spartans. Blue team's mission would be to board Gamma Station and destroy the circumference's navigational data. Red team's mission would be to go to Reach and defend the orbital generators. The two groups would board Pelicans and immediately depart the Pillar of Autumn. While the Spartans were en route to their missions, Keyes would begin to engage the Covenant ships in orbit around Reach. Keyes would observe the appearance of a new type of Covenant vessel. This vessel had a high-pulse laser that could literally cut UNSC ships into pieces. After witnessing this new Covenant ship destroy several UNSC vessels, Keyes decided that they had no choice but to do everything possible to stop this new threat. After a long and exhaustive battle, the Pillar of Autumn was able to destroy this Covenant vessel, but the damage had already been done. At the start of the conflict, the UNSC had about 120 ships in orbit around Reach. By the time Keyes took out this new Covenant ship, the UNSC was down to about 20 functioning ships. The battle was not going well for the UNSC, and if the orbital supermech guns were taken out, there would not be enough ships to defend the planet. The Master Chief and Blue Team crashed their Pelican into Gamma Station. Just as they were leaving the ship to board Gamma Station, they were ambushed by a squad of Covenant elites. In the ensuing battle, Spartan James's thruster pack was punctured by Covenant energy charges. This sent James tumbling and spinning out of control into space. It would be the last time the Master Chief would ever see James. Spartan James was never recovered. The Master Chief and Linda would then fight their way into Gamma Station. Upon entering Gamma Station, Blue Team would discover several squads of Marines engaging with the Covenant. The Master Chief quickly took command and coordinated the Marines. The Spartans and the Marines were able to successfully cut their way to the Circumference's hangar. Linda covered Chief while he boarded the Oni stealth craft and destroyed its navigational data. The Spartans and the Marines would then board a Pelican and attempt to leave the station, but the automatic doors would not open. Linda would leave the Pelican and attempt to open the doors manually. She would be successful, but it came at a steep price. Linda was ambushed by several squads of Covenant foot soldiers. She was hit with multiple overcharged plasma blasts, which overwhelmed her shields and blasted her armor. Several parts of her armor would melt into her skin. Her vitals would flatline and she would be clinically dead. The Master Chief would then exit the vehicle and fight off the remaining Covenant forces. He recovered Linda before reboarding the Pelican dropship. Meanwhile, Red Team would be experiencing tragedy of their own. The team encompassed 22 Spartans. While en route to the planet's surface, the Pelican pilot was killed. Spartan Josh attempted to use the remote piloting system to guide the Pelican to the surface, but the ship was too damaged by the Covenant's attack. Spartan Frederick ordered all of the remaining Spartans to overpressurize their Mjolnir suits and bail out of the Pelican. He hoped that the overpressurized suits would help soften their landing, but the fall would still be fatal. 4 Spartans would die after impacting with the planet's surface. The remaining 18 had varying injuries, but they were still able to make their way towards the orbital generators. They would do their best to defend the orbital generators, but there were too many Covenant forces. The generators would later be overrun. After some time, the Chief would make his way back to the Pillar of Autumn. His first order of business upon arriving at the ship would be to store Linda in a cryotube. The Chief believed that Linda's injuries could be healed and she could be saved if she would receive the right medical attention. The Chief would then make his way to the bridge to brief Captain Keyes. He would inform Keyes that his mission was a success. Keyes would then inform the Chief that there was no hope to save Reach. The planet would soon fall to the Covenant. Keyes would advise that the orbital generators on the planet's surface had been overrun and that the orbital platforms could no longer defend Reach. Keyes would also inform the Chief that they had lost contact with Red Team. Chief requested to lead a team to the planet's surface to assist and recover his Spartans. Keyes denied this request and told him that they needed to turn their focus to Operation Red Flag, or the Spartan sacrifice would be in vain. Keyes and Cortana enacted Part 2 of the Cole Protocol. She would take the ship to a randomized point in space. They would then make their way back to human-controlled space. Going out to a random point in space would make the UNSC's movements significantly more difficult to track. This would keep the Covenant forces from finding other human colonies and even Earth. While charting the course, the Chief noticed several navigation symbols scrolling across Cortana. He thought the symbols looked familiar and mentioned it to Cortana. Cortana would review the Master Chief's mission logs to find a match for what he may have seen. Cortana found the match. The navigational symbols matched some of the engravings the Chief found on the recovered rock from Sigma Octanus 4. This is the first time the UNSC was able to successfully interpret these symbols. Cortana found that these symbols were coordinates. After researching, Cortana found that these coordinates were in a place that would honor the Cole Protocol. She inputted these coordinates as the Pillar of Autumn's next destination. Keyes then ordered all non-essential personnel to go into cryosleep for the long journey. After several weeks of traveling through slipspace, the Pillar of Autumn would finally emerge in normal space and orbit around a gas giant called Threshold. The Pillar of Autumn would not be alone. It would be surrounded by several Covenant vessels that managed to follow it through slipspace. While in orbit around Threshold, Cortana was able to detect the presence of a large construct. This construct would be a ring-shaped installation. This installation would later be known as Halo. This is going to conclude today's chapter of this story, but before I leave you, let's discuss some interesting facts related to today's video. When boarding Gamma Station, Chief encounters several groups of Marines engaging with the Covenant. The leader of those Marines was Sergeant Avery Johnson in all of his cigar-smoking glory. This was one of the first times that the Chief would actually meet Sergeant Johnson, but it certainly would not be the last. The lore from the Halo book The Fall of Reach and the video game Halo Reach differ and contradict each other in a lot of ways, but they are both canon and should be included. Prior to the Covenant's main assault on Planet Reach, a single Covenant carrier managed to reach the planet and camouflage itself. The Covenant conducted ground operations on Reach for many weeks leading up to the planet's eventual fall. They were countered by a group of Spartans called Noble Team. Noble Team did everything in their power to take out the Covenant forces, but one by one, each of them would fall in battle. The last Noble Team member on Reach, known as Noble 6, would bring a fragment of Cortana to Captain Keyes before the Pillar of Autumn would flee the planet. Noble 6 would cover the Pillar of Autumn's escape with a Mac gun. He would be left behind on the planet where he would be presumed dead. The Covenant pursued the Pillar of Autumn into slipspace. They were able to do this due to their superior slipspace navigational technology. The Covenant fleet that followed the Autumn was called the Fleet of Particular Justice. The leader of that fleet was called Thel Vadami, but you would know him as the Arbiter. This would be the very same Arbiter that would help the Chief and humanity in Halo 3. If you are enjoying this content, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for future content as it helps this channel continue to grow. Next week we will get into the content covered in the second Halo book called The Flood. We will discuss the Pillar of Autumn's last stand as well as its crash landing on Alpha Halo. Until then, thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.